we're gonna switch and do a setup for a wide cap frame. The wide cap frame driver and frame work a little bit differently. Let's pull one of those over to the stash of hats. So the neat thing about this particular jig for the wide cap frame is it rotates so that you can see all sides of your hat. It's really hard to get the clips on the bottom of this driver, or on the bottom of the frame. So same thing, we're going to put the stabilizer on. This piece of stabilizer is not quite as long as the stitching area on here. If you were needing to stitch down the sides of this hat, a couple things you'll want to be aware of inside your hat. This is an elastic back hat. Often hats have a little bar tack inside the hat to keep the brim, no, the band up in the hat. You'll need to pop that stitch on either side to get these to go on this hat frame nicely. It'll be lots easier to manage as you go. But the principles are the same. You're going to get your frame on the driver the same way and fold out the band the same way. And then this is one of those hats that is a little flatter brim and sometimes a little bit more difficult to manage. You slide it on, making sure the seam in the hat is aligned with the guide. And the band holder comes over. And this one has a reference dot on it, which I quite like, for center. And I'm thinking based on how stiff this hat is, I would probably need to adjust this a little bit. So dot lined up, lots easier to get good placement without having to move your design around on screen. This one probably needs an adjustment for this particular hat style. It's probably fine for a softer hat, but this is a very stiff hat. There's also a little tab on the jig, so you can rotate the whole jig around. And probably what I was fighting with here is the bulk of that elastic under there from the band. And these 3 screws here are adjustable. So depending on your hat, you might need to loosen or tighten these 2 bands. But you won't know that until you have hats in your hat. And I probably did a couple hundred hats before I found a hat that needed to be adjusted. So I'm going to loosen that back off. Rotate back. Just give me that out there a little bit. A little easier to do up and keep the hat a little straighter. Much easier. And the flatter the brim gets, the more difficult it is to manage. But this one's not super hard, so it's going to go in there okay. And our 4 clamps are going way at the bottom this time. Binder clips. Binder clips. That's what it is. This hat has some stretch to it, so it is good to keep that in place so it doesn't move on you. And then this would slide onto the machine the same way. Do you want to stitch on this one or talk about flat brim hats?
Let's talk about flat brim hats.
Okay. So now we know how to do wide cap frame. Works the same way as the advanced cap frame, just in bigger stitching area. This is also how I do my hat backs. I'm going to talk about that before I take this off. So hat backs are the other thing you might want to do. And the wide cap frame makes it really super easy. So take all the clips off. I make this much of a mess at home too. So stabilize it back in place. Give me that in there. This one has a really thick tag. Okay. So again, popping those side seam stitches will keep this flatter and easier to work with. And we want roughly the same placement, except instead of having this on one side of the brim or the other, we'll use that to help hold the band in place on the driver. And this is too loose right now. So we would go in and tighten our clips. But having that stitch popped here will allow you to keep that part of the band flat. And then you can stitch here. Often people like names on the back of like team hats and company hats, because the whole team or the whole company is wearing the same logo on the front. But I don't want to wear somebody else's stinky hat. I would like to wear my own stinky hat. That would be much better. So names are easy to do here. I've also done logos and that other word. The thing, like your company motto. I've done company mottos that are short back here. Is that word? Yes, that's the word. I didn't think to bring one of those hats. I didn't bring any of my well-worn hats from home. But this works well for those wide cap frame, on a wide cap frame rather. So that's my secret trick for hat backs. And the last category of hats is our really super flat brim, really super stiff hats. They're harder to complete because they just don't bend to get in the front. Cap frame rather. We'll switch off to our flat brim hat frame. And we're going to grab that hat. So this hat, very, very flat brim, difficult to get in a curved brim holder. So we're not even going to try. We're going to switch gears and get a better tool for the job. And this has a really, really neat ratcheting system on it. So just 2 clips on this one. And this is the whole driver. This is a lock and unlock. When you unlock, the brim holder comes off. And we're going to start with it locked so that as it goes in, it ratchets in and tightens down. Get that on the jig. And then we're going to fight with our flat brim hat. Because it takes a little bit of coercion to get it in, but once it's in, it's great. So you're still going to fold out the band. And usually on snapback hats, I undo the snaps so you don't fight with all that extra tension. And then this is a 2-handed project where you're going to squeeze the hat so that it curves at the brim. And then we're going to slide the brim, the locking mechanism over. On either side, there is a spot here where you'll want to hook the band in so it stays on the outside of the mechanism on the rest of the cap. And these will be landing, the teeth will be landing right at the seam line again. This one I don't have as much practice with, but you'll want that center lined up on the center of your hat. Flip that band out and hold it through there. You won't get caught going into the rest of the mechanism. Then stabilizer down, but I don't have a good stabilizer, so we're going to move it off for a second. And then you're just going to push this down and ratchet as you go. Just little thumb holds if you need to pull tighter. The one thing you need to be aware of here is if you're not tight enough, you're going to have some flex this way, which you don't want. You want this nice and tight and as even on both sides as you can get it. And I'm not perfectly lined up here. So if you did need to readjust, you need to loosen the lock on the driver, on the frame. And then that will loosen that lock. Lock it again. It has the most satisfying sound of the bunch. So then your super flat brim hat is managed, but not bent. And it'll be flat again when you take it off the machine. And then this is ready to stitch. Using the other driver, specific to this hat driver. Cool. Big cap frame driver. Now we're ready to go. Ooh, fancy warning messages. Ooh, we get a small lesson here. we have bobbin thread showing up on the top, which leads me to believe our upper thread got caught somewhere, probably on the spool. So we're going to back up, and we're going to start back at the beginning on that. We're just going to make sure that everything's threaded properly. And yes, it was stuck under the spool. That extra tension will do all sorts of weird things for you. Happy finished embroidery music! Hat out of our hat frame. We're ready to do the next one. Now we've got a sweet hat to color. So, a couple things. I usually stitch hats with a bigger needle. The default size on this machine is a 7511. I prefer to do hats with a 9014. They have a little less flex and bend, and they're going to be sturdier going through all the interfacing that's in the front of the hat. And then just have fun, because custom hats are a riot. But if you want to play with hats too, I could hook you up. That's the key part of this. So if you have more questions, get in touch. Sewing machines at mysewingroom.ca is the best place to go with those questions. And then we'll carry on, carry forward. Thank you guys for joining me. Be safe, be kind, be calm, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.